I've given the Hisense U7H a lot of praise and recommended it as a top pick in its price class, but if I'm being honest, this Hisense U7H right here, it has me rethinking everything. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and today we're going to dig into the Hisense U7H TV, a TV which has, well, it's surprised me so much that I've had to spend some time reevaluating some things. I expected this would be a quick review process, and in many ways it has. But the U7H is so much better than I expected that it has me wondering if it might actually be the better TV pick for most people. I'm going to explain exactly what's led me to ponder that question so seriously and ultimately land on some firm recommendations. So I highly recommend sticking around to the end, not just skipping to the end, because everything in the middle is like way more important than usual. Before we dig in, I just want to say thanks for all of your support over the past few weeks. Y'all have been dropping some killer comments and inspiring some awesome conversations. I also appreciate your words of support, almost as much as I appreciate your clicks of support, hint, hint. And I'm not gonna make a big deal about it, but we're about 20K away from 1 million subscribers, I'm just saying. Also, before we dig in, let's set the stage for this review a bit. The 65-inch Hisense U7H goes for $1,000 as I record this video, while the 65-inch U7H is going for about $800. So keep that price gap in mind as we go through this. Okay, let's review a TV. Now, since this is a Hisense TV, I have to point out that this review is for the U7H as sold in North America only. The U7H in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, for example, completely different TV, just like the U8H is vastly different in those other markets. So sorry, but that's facts. With that said, normally I leave this for later in the video, but today I'm getting straight to numbers for Nit-Nerds, and I suggest staying tuned for this part because it's central to this idea that the U7H might be the better choice for a lot of folks. Okay, so I gathered all my gear and I measured the Hisense U7H's peak brightness in SDR at just over 800 nits. This was in filmmaker mode with the backlight maxed out, so quite bright. In HDR, I measured sustained peak brightness at around the same 800 nit level, 819 nits to be exact, with peaks coming in just under 1000 nits. So clearly, this puts the U7H in well under the U8H in terms of peak brightness performance. And you can tell the U7H doesn't have quite as much punch in bright highlights and color brightness. I'll also note that I think 1000 nit peak brightness is kind of the bar for whether a TV is really delivering a meaningful HDR experience on an LCD-based TV, since LCD TVs' black levels are generally not as good as an OLED TVs. They need a bit more brightness to really sell that HDR contrast. But that leads me to what really surprises me about the U7H. See, unlike the U8H, this TV does not have a mini LED backlight system. So in addition to lowering expectations around peak brightness, I also had lowered expectations about overall black level and also how much blooming control the TV could exert. Blooming, for those not familiar, is when you get this murky halo of light around the edges of a bright object on a black background, or when you see a bloom of light around the white closed captions that overlay black letterbox bars. But the U7H is remarkably impressive in the backlight control department. Like, it passes our usual torture tests with impressive authority. I was never bothered by blooming when I watched this TV. There is some here, but it is not distracting. Even off axis, the blooming isn't as apparent as I'm used to. So I am seriously surprised here. The result of the decent peak brightness and good backlight control is pretty stinking good HDR presentation. And part of that is aided by the U7H's mostly solid tone mapping. And by that, I mean that it retains details in the bright highlights really well. It's not as good at maintaining shadow details, but the low luminance performance, darker stuff, is definitely good for a TV at this price, and even stacks up well against more expensive TVs. Now I want to talk about color. And guys, I'm not kidding here. I am blown away by the color measurements I'm getting. In fact, I did a hard factory reset on this TV, then ran a firmware update, then tested it again just to see if I got the same results. I did, and the results were phenomenal. In SDR, the color checker errors averaged out below 3, which is technically not perceivable to the human eye, and that's with 0 adjustments to the white balance as well, by the way. And the max error was just under 4, so even the worst color error is not even worth talking about. In HDR, same thing. Delta error was 3. Folks, that kind of out-of-box color performance, again, this is in filmmaker mode for SDR and HDR, is virtually unheard of for a TV at this price. And in fact, I feel like I need to go back and measure the U7H again because I don't think that more expensive TV performed nearly as well. Wow. Last bit on color for you nit nerds, the U7H covers 94% of DCI-P3 and 75% of Rec 2020. So again, not as great as the U7H, which stands to reason because it isn't as bright. White balance, barely had to touch it to get it to D65, which is the Hollywood reference standard. In the low color temperature, which is meant to be warm, it had a little too much blue in it, which is totally typical. I backed the blue gain down like 5 points in SDR and HDR, and the errors were barely over 1, which is super aspirational for all but the most expensive TVs out there. Again, that's just ridiculously good from a measurements perspective. So if we package all those numbers up into a takeaway, I think what you need to know is that the U7H is a remarkable performer across the board. Way better than I expected in black levels, contrast, and color accuracy. It lacks the muscular punch you get in the U7H in terms of brightness, but it is otherwise dangerously close in performance to that more expensive TV. Now, the U7H does share some of the same quirks that I discovered in the U7H. So for instance, when I stream HDR content that has objects with a lot of detail and bright highlights in them, take this bear scene for instance. You can see a shimmer when the bear moves in the fur. You can also see it to a lesser degree in this parakeet's feathers, and then here it is on full display on this dome structure. I personally find this annoying. Actually, no, I really hate it. If I saw it more outside of YouTube, I'd have a big problem. So far though, I haven't. Not on Disney Plus, HBO Max, or Netflix anyway, and it's almost non-existent with similar footage on a UHD Blu-ray. In other matters of motion, I feel like without any motion smoothing on, the U7H doesn't look as smooth and natural as, say, the TCL6 series. But then again, neither did the U7H, so no real change there. I am curious to see how the TCL5 series might stack up, but that TV has not yet made its way to me. I also have to comment on something weird I've noticed with both this TV and the U7H. I don't know why, but the number of ads I get on YouTube is exactly double that on, say, the TCL6 series Roku TV. I haven't gotten to the bottom of it. It's almost like it may be a bug, but I hate it. Like, if I owned this TV, I would definitely be getting YouTube Premium, no doubt about it. As for gaming features, the U7H is similarly outfitted to the U7H with 2 4K 120Hz HDMI inputs, variable refresh rate, very low input lag, and auto game mode, and it lights up all the green check marks on an Xbox Series X. But while we're talking about unlocking the most potential from your game console or PC, I still don't like that we have to press this one button on the remote to access the HDMI enhanced mode to unlock all of those features. Though to Hisense's credit, when there's no signal going to one of those ports, there's a message that pops up that suggests you do exactly that, although it doesn't say go and push this one button. As for sound quality, surprisingly decent, especially in the bass, which helps give the TV a much fuller sound than most TVs. It's not fantastic, but it doesn't flat out suck either, which is a big bonus. So when I take everything into consideration, I think we're looking at a TV here that offers almost everything the more expensive step-up model does, save the more powerful brightness. Everything else is practically the same. I think folks who really want a super bright TV, and I mean super duper bright, might be good with spending a bit more money on the U7H. But most folks, I think the U7H is the smarter buy. I get that the price gap isn't huge, but it's nothing to dismiss either. And I mean, the U7H is just so much better than I expected. I think it deserves a lot of attention. If you don't consider yourself a videophile on a budget and you just want to get the best picture you can for your money, honestly, I think the U7H is the real value leader right now. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. Are you as surprised as I am at how well the U7H ended up doing? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and here's 2 other videos I think you might like.